Okay, guys, we're live and I'm super excited to have Renato here with me today. He was part of the Pleasure and Selling Mastermind in the first round when we kicked off the mastermind. And he's an empowerment coach. I actually personally also work with him, and he's built an amazing client community with clients who are just skyrocketing in development. And yeah, I personally also feel very empowered because of him. And I'm super excited to have him here to talk about his results in the mastermind, because he's been able to sign 4 premium clients and made 15K of it. And I'm very excited to share his experience with you guys as well. Renato, do you want to share briefly who you are, what you do, and who you help?
Yes. So, hi, you guys. It's a pleasure to see you. I don't really see you, but to be with you, and I really feel you. So, the work with Amy has been for me incredible, and I really found through the mastermind with her, I found what problem I can solve, which people that are actually having that problem. And in my case, when we started off, I had barely a clear sense of whom I'm actually serving. And so through the work with Amy, I found that actually helping successful entrepreneurs to overcome limiting beliefs and fear and guilt and shame is something that is very necessary in our society, as most people who are creating incredible empires, like ventures and businesses, and they always hit a plateau where they are ultimately achieving what they want. And then they find themselves in that gap, in that hole where nothing makes sense. Okay, what should I do now? Okay, I've proven myself, but I'm still not good enough, and so forth and so on. And so really, it has become like a beautiful work to support people and help them out of that little, bucket that they find themselves in once they actually found incredible success and have difficulties enjoying that.
Cool. I love that. I love that explanation, and it really resonates with me as well. I was so grateful to work with you, and it wasn't, I might have not been in a point where I didn't enjoy my success, but even coming from a point where I was excited about that, I feel like I was here. And by the inner work that we did and the limiting beliefs, I got to enjoy it even more. So I love that. And let's talk a bit more about where you were in business when we started working together and what your sales activities look like. Were you already selling, and at what price point?
So my price point before we started out working was basically somewhat around 500 to maybe 1,000. I had aspirations to go higher, but didn't really know how to put it into action. And I think it's very safe to say that when we started to work out what kind of game plan that my business should roll on, my idea of having a business was more of a hobby, if we're honest. So the way that I was handling my business was not very say stable and not very maintainable. And so I had a lot of gaps, and still feel there is a lot to do, a lot to go on. But I noticed how the idea of having a business has incredibly shifted through the work with you. So I really thought I'm just going to reach out to some people, and then ultimately I'm sharing what I do, and it's going to be fun. And, there's plenty of people that I could help. I don't really know what their problem is and how I'm helping them, but I can help them, So, and then finding out it makes actual sense to have like a back-end system set up. It also makes sense to maybe have a certain strategy of posting and social media engagement. And maybe you want to double down on your messaging. So just that it makes sense how you're approaching people and how you actually convey what you are able to help them. So, and that was just, a bare friction of what I learned. So ultimately, I think I was at a point where I did not understand business as such. And then ultimately I got to understand there's a lot to having and building a business,
Cool, I love that. And what popped to my mind was the image of throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping that it sticks. And I do want to give you a lot of credits there as well, because I know what you were doing before working with me. And of course, it was focused around fun, and it was more like something that you did from a passion. but you were doing so much already. You were throwing so much spaghetti against the wall. You were having so many calls. And maybe you can tell a bit about what changed there, because I know you were having like maybe 3 calls a day for like a number of days. What happened there and why weren't you able to close anyone?
So first of all, most of those calls were collaborative calls. So the calls that I got signed in were mostly like people who wanted to just see if there is any kind of collaboration, and maybe some, I did a lot of free coaching, you know, like for me, one of the major, I'd say like reasons why I'm actually good at what I'm doing is because I have a shit ton of experience in my bag, but I did it all for free. I would say most of it. So ultimately, I know exactly how to help people, but I did not know how to say like convincingly and lovingly sell my service. Because for me, the idea of sales as such was something that I had like big issues with. So I was really feeling a lot of say a lot of shame in the idea of sales as such and marketing. This was very like, I remember I had a conversation with my mom like early this year where I was convinced that I am going to invest into a guy that is going to take over, you know, the sales process and lead generation, which I then ultimately did. And so just to tell you where I was emotionally and from my mindset, she was telling, yeah, but you shouldn't really do all this sales and marketing. That's really something that only bad people and sleazy people do. And of course, I already had a little different mindset back then. But you know, at the core of things, one major reason why I was sabotaging myself, because that's really what's happening, right? One major reason why I was sabotaging myself in terms of sales and marketing is because I wasn't allowing myself to actually get all that money in. And so it was really helpful for me, like in the whole process of going through your mastermind, to understand, first of all, like that money isn't something bad. Sales and marketing isn't something bad. On the contrary, like we're going to do that from the very first thing that we can do. We're going to barter with our mums to give us milk, and then later on barter with people around us to give us what we need. So it's always happening, you know? So that really shifted big time. And then ultimately through the whole process, I found much joy and pleasure in, you know, caring for people. And of course, that is allowed to cost something because there's an energetical exchange. And if you don't be mindful of that, it's going to cost you more than you can uphold ultimately, you know.
I love how you put that in there, the last part about how it's going to cost you eventually, because the energy is flowing anyway. So if you're not accepting that energy back, then it's just a leak. And yeah, I also want to honor you by saying that I really saw how much power you put behind going through the mastermind, and how dedicated you were to figuring out what the missing puzzle piece was, especially from you being a coach who works with helping other people with limiting beliefs, to really dive in and look into what is my limiting belief around selling and how can I go past that. Because it takes a lot to really be honest about your own limitations. And I just want to honor you for like putting all the effort in that you did. And then also I wanted to ask what else has been going on behind the scenes? What are the things that in your business shifted a lot? How do you operate now?
So something that I would have to put there into the mix is maybe that I have a tendency to really drill down on things. Once I notice that I have a blockage and something limiting me, I can be very relentless. So what I did is ultimately, once I noticed, well, I'm actually having a lot of limiting ideas here, a lot of blockages that keep me from selling confidently and with pleasure. I started to look for podcasts and books and so forth. And so I really consumed an incredible amount of podcasts and books around selling with love and pleasure in selling, and like how can you really shift that and so forth and so on. And I think it's due to that as well, where I found like an actual passion to start to connect again with people, because I was kind of isolated, although I was really helping a lot of people personally, you know, putting myself as vulnerably and authentically out there. I was rather in a bad spot, or say a little isolated, yes. And so what then shifted is ultimately that I took building a business, an enterprise more serious, and also found, well, there's actually some work with that, you know. So I mean, wearing all those hats at the beginning for yourself that's really a job, you know? And at some point, I remember it was kind of like demotivating when I realized, when I reckoned, like, what, this is the amount of jobs and work that I have to stem. But then I was also thinking to myself, so what could I do once I have built a business? Because once you know how to sell, once you know how to build a business, you can always copy that into whatever other form. It's like driving a bicycle, and then you drive a motorcycle, and then you drive something else that has two wheels, or maybe a horse. Once you know how to ride something, you can always, just copy paste it onto other processes. So I said, I really want to understand this process. So let's go there and, dig in there. And sometimes it's frustrating. But I believe that, you're always reaping the rewards of what you are investing. And I'm kind of the person that just, puts it all in there and sees.
Yeah, cool. And just to give people an idea of what is in the curriculum of what we teach in the mastermind and the different phases, and then I would love to hear from you where you got the most value out. But for everybody who's watching and is not familiar with what we teach, we have 4 steps in the program. The first step is about the foundation, and that's all about getting into the right mindset, but also about the program that you're actually creating and the branding and the messaging and the premium product that you want to put out in the market. That's the first step. Then the second step is sign clients now, is where you really do short-term strategies so you can sell. And then also there's a lot of guidance in how to do a sales call, how to do how to set the whole funnel up, how to make sure somebody who maybe says maybe or no turns out to be a yes in the end anyway. Then the third phase is about your authentic sales system, the system that you can keep with you even after the mastermind. And that is just a structure that you can fall back to anytime, that is tailor-made, that we made together. And then the fourth part is the CEO consistency, where we also support you with tools that help you run your business in an easier way and to also stay consistent in the process of selling. Because of course, if you don't sell, you're not going to sell. So those are the 4 pillars. And I would love to hear from you, Renato, 1 or 2 points that really stood out to you and that helped you get those results of signing those premium clients.
Let's see. So first of all, for me, what I would really help was the accountability. I tend to react a little aversive toward pressure. But it was really helpful because I noticed how little accountability I was creating for myself. So the way that you have been managing the community, also like with putting it out there to so you guys are writing in what's your monthly or your weekly goals and so forth. That was really helpful. So I think the major takeaway was really accountability and how to structure my week and my the way that I am, making progress as such. In this way, I never did that, I had several teams and I worked a lot, but I never had an online business, something digitally where I had to have all these things set up and so forth. So that was really helpful. Another thing that I understood to be a lasting motivator for me is the consistency, really, like the consistent aspect. I think it's safe to say that if I would go through the whole mastermind the second time, I could really redo the whole process anew and would still learn incredible amounts because the time was not enough for me, just in my personal process. But then understanding that this is probably always that way, like you're going through some process and understanding that now you have all the tools available. Now you need to integrate them. Consistency is ultimately the big game changer. Once you are noticing, it doesn't stop at the end. It really is only like the beginning phase for you to then start to thrive with what you have learned now and integrate them. And of course, there will be needs and uncertainties where you have to kind of dive deeper into. And that's kind of like the part of the integration. But the element of consistency to stay really with that process and allow yourself to struggle and just stick to the topic, I think that's really also a big insight that I gained, especially at the end where I noticed, okay, so yeah, you just drive, you keep on driving.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. I love, first of all, that you mentioned that everybody starts at a different point, because that's very, very true. Everybody starts with a different backpack. Some people might have already been selling, some might have been selling premium offers, but just not in a consistent way. Some even in the mastermind start with not having sold anything. That doesn't happen that often, because I want my clients to really be in a certain level already when they're in the mastermind. But some haven't sold anything, but have the experience of working in corporate. And then what happens most in the mastermind is people who have been selling, but at a lower price point, and don't know how to get to the next level, because that's where ultimately marketing and messaging comes in. And if you don't have that in the right place, it's going to be very hard to sell a premium offer. And what you said about the 16 weeks, yeah, that's, you were in the first round, and we've been playing with adding a possibility for people to stay on longer, because I've also noticed it really, there's so much in the mastermind, and it's like reading a good book once or twice. The second time you're going to get so much more depth from it. And that's also something I really want to share with whoever is listening. I don't know who needs to hear this, but at some point you have evolved a lot in your business and you feel like you know a lot. And then when you talk to a new coach or somebody that you might be interested in working with, and you hear me say, okay, we work on the foundation, we work on sign clients now, we work on creating a solid plan for you to sell, all those things from the top level, you might be thinking, well, I know all of that. But when you go into that chapter, when you go into that page, you see so much more depth, and there are gonna be like 1 or 2 golden nuggets in there, and that is gonna be worth your investment alone. All the other things are nice, and it's refreshing to hear again. But then also comes what you already shared. It's all about implementation, because you can absorb a lot of knowledge, and you can hear a lot of new strategies and see what resonates with you and what you want to bring into your business. But at the same time, it's all about taking the steps, taking the action, and really staying consistent with that. And I know you've been doing that. And I know when we ended the 16 weeks, you had like a solid plan for you moving forward. I also know that life got quite challenging for you because you were moving a lot. And I'm also a digital nomad. I know that moving can mess up your flow. But I would love to hear how you feel now, knowing that you have a system in place. Does that bring you some sort of safety and peace in your business and in your mind?
I am a technique geek, meaning that I really love mechanisms and understanding them. And sometimes I get frustrated with them and then take them apart and then build them back together. So what I noticed, it's like have you ever like put water to a plant and watched it grow, right? Most people know at least that there's plants and that they need water. And so the same thing goes for my business. Once I understood that there's a foundation now, and I feel I understand more and more, the more time I spend with it, the more motivated I am actually to spend time with it. So that's where I am currently. It's really pleasurable to see, to understand more and more of these initial insights. So that's what I'm supposed to do. And now I recognize, and if I actually put it that way, then it hits a little, more home. So I think it's really beautiful now to see that building this whole structure of helping people with what I believe is essential to the mental health of humans, that the foundation and kind of like the container around it, the business structure as such, is something that I can ultimately indefinitely play with, and trying to fine tune and find different angles and make it more harmonious, more mine, right? Because at the beginning you're starting out with the idea and the substance of someone else, of course, in order for you to have like a go-to tool. And then I believe, especially after you're finished, once you have set up your structure, the game is really to make it yours. And that needs time and it needs patience. But I think after maybe an initial 2-3 months or something, where you have to now find your own way around it, what naturally happens is that you're finding little golden bits that you say, this is nice. Why don't I try this? And hey, I could go there and try this in there. So that's basically where I'm currently at. And yeah, it is also beautiful. I'm always going back to some of the basics that we talked about, and I have created my own little brand document and creating my own little structures and playing around with this and how does that feel. Yeah, and of course, as I said, like the time is very limited at some point within the mastermind, but I think that you can then compensate right after. If you take all that you have learned and start to make it your own. Big part of it is, you know, like to create it all anew or some of it, and then try use your own words, maybe try use your own style and find out how does that feel? How does that roll over your tongue and so forth?
Yeah, I love that. And what would you, yeah, if you think about working with me, what did you love most about my coaching?
So what I really appreciate is your diligence in providing value. So I could really, I was really resonating with the amount of, say, time that you put into creating the best possible offer, the best possible structure for people, and how much energy and how much heart you put it in. So like, I really enjoyed to notice that you're not just selling like the theory around pleasure in sales, but you really actually find a lot of pleasure in selling. And I think that's
Yeah.
very essential because, like, I mean, if somebody tells you rocket science but really doesn't feel rockets for nothing, then ultimately you're not going to follow along. So in your case, that's one thing that I really enjoyed. The other thing is like how much thought you put into keeping people accountable, caring for people, asking what they love, what is important to them, where they're struggling. So it's very important, I believe, that when we're joining and putting our heart into it, that the coach who is guiding us also really loves and puts his heart or her heart into our process in turn. And you really outmatched it there.
Oh, thank you. That warms my heart. Yeah, I'm a big sales geek. I love everything about it. For me, selling is just connecting, and there's nothing more beautiful than connecting.
Yeah.
And to wrap this up, I would love to hear what you would love to say to those who might be on the fence of joining the Pleasure in Selling Mastermind, but are for whatever reason not 100% in yet. What would you love to say to them?
So what I can tell you is that you can wait and try to figure it out yourself. And I've done that for years. And maybe the reason is because you don't have enough money, or maybe the reason is because you don't have enough time. Maybe there's so many different commitments that you are trying to juggle, and that's all fair. But here's one thing I want you to consider. What I tell people is that your issues, your obstacles, your blockages, they stick with you. You just find different ways to deal with that. And if you could have a solid structure, a solid plan by which somebody could wrap up, say, 3 years of self-trial into, say, 4 to 5 months, why don't you just go in there and really put 100% in there? Because the problem why you are staying on the fence is because you're not 100% convinced you want to create something. So it's not about if it's the right coach or the right mastermind. It's about, do you really want to really create that business of yours or not? So I think it's not to say like, well, the program that Amy put together is absolutely flawless in what she does. Like, she has shifted tremendously what I consider to be important in business and sales. And I can test, like, for many other people who have worked with her, who I got to know in the mastermind, it's more the question, are you in there with your own business idea? And that really helps when I found to talk to her, just, you know, to really start to engage with her and ask her, so what do you think about my situation and so forth, to start engaging with the process of following what really wants to come out of you and wants to be created, you know? And then this mastermind is just like a very solid plan for you to try.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Yeah. So for everybody who feels like this is the time, and I think it's more of making the decision that it's time, because waiting for that feeling, you can wait for many, many years. So it is all about making that decision, going all in and taking that leap, and then investing and collapsing time and just getting the results faster and in a more fun way. So whoever is ready for that, whoever's ready for the Pleasure in Selling Mastermind, either comment below Mastermind or send me a DM and we can talk about the process, what it looks like, if it makes sense for you. And then, of course, like results like Renato, 4 premium clients and 15K in that time. And then, of course, all the things that you take with you right now that you will keep using in your business on and on and on. Yeah, that's also possible for you. So let's have a chat if that's you. Then if you resonated with Renato and if you love how he talks and what he does and you need an empowerment coach, Renato, where can they find you?
I mean, I am basically on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn at this point. You're also finding me on YouTube. Just type in Renato Montañez. So Renato Montanes, and then you'll find my renatomontanes.com webpage and all the handles. You can't miss me if you're typing in Renato Montanes.
Cool. I will also put a link in the notes so they can easily find it. And yeah, thank you so much for doing this interview with me. And yeah, I'm very happy that you were in the mastermind.
My pleasure, honestly. Thank you.